welcome to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends. Today is Thursday, August the 13th. I am your host, Leon Wolf, and we are delighted that you've decided to join us. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Those are all on me and my computer tonight. Not Aaron's fault, as they usually are. In all seriousness, no, thank you very much, Aaron, for the hard work that you do producing the show for absolutely free, and for everybody else's efforts, which are also absolutely free and without remuneration on the show. So with that having been said, let me introduce our panel. First of all, we have with us Scott Lincicome of the Cato Institute, looking dapper as always in what looks to be Rodney Dangerfield's jacket. We also have Neal Doing from the Federalist, Jeff Blehar of the Ace of Spades Decision Desk, F. Bill McMorris of the Washington Free Beacon, and joining us for our guest host this week is Rich Cromwell from the Federalist. Glad to have you with us, Rich. Thank you for joining us on the program. Let's get right to it. Top news items of the day. We're going to get, first of all, into the Hillary email server business. Rich, the shit, as they say, is getting real with respect to the Hillary emails. And it looks like really even law enforcement at this point is closing in around Hillary. What do you think the chances are that we're going to see some sort of actual criminal enforcement action taken by the FBI with respect to Hillary, or I think more likely someone around her, someone like Uma Abedin or someone?
I think at this point, we're even seeing liberal media. They're not admitting that anything is wrong necessarily, but they're sounding the alarm. It's no longer, oh, it's just a nothing thing. So in true Clinton fashion, she will throw someone under the bus. Nothing's going to happen to Hillary here. Let's be honest. As I have said a time or two, the Clintons could murder a homeless person on live television, and they would get away with it. But they will throw someone. They will find someone to take the blame for her. And I think at this point, it's no longer something that can be ignored. There are going to be consequences, just not for Hilda.
Neal, one of the things that Jamel Bouie said in Slate today, he says, listen, the thing that's really particularly damaging about this scandal, and again, we're talking about Jamel Bouie here, a guy who's a dyed-in-the-wool liberal. He says this is a damaging scandal to Hillary because it plays into, I guess, the worst preconceived notions that people have about Hillary. I mean, there's a reason that the 47% remark was so damaging to Romney, because it played into the worst caricatures of him as a guy who was rich and out of touch and didn't care about little people. This scandal, in the same way, plays into a lot of the worst attributes about Hillary, that she's secretive, that she feels privileged. It is, for that reason, are people like Jamel Bouie right to be worried that this might be the fatal scandal for Hillary's candidacy?
I'm hesitant to ever say that anything is going to be a fatal scandal for Clinton. However, there is definitely some concern. I think some justified concern on their part, because Hillary seems to have gotten caught red-handed. Her ignorance on display for all to see. She's displayed the internet prowess of your typical grandmother. Only the thing is that your grandmother, my grandmother, probably don't have classified state secrets on their home computer. So yeah, I think Jamel's right to be concerned there, and I think the rest of the Democratic Party should be awfully concerned, because who do they have besides Hillary? Well, they've got Bernie Sanders, who is literally a socialist, a self-declared socialist. They have Jim Webb. He's okay, I guess. But then, who else?
What about Martin O'Malley and Chafee? Those world beaters.
I know, it's right. Like the metric system is this year. But hey, look, here's the thing. This all paves the way for Joe Biden. That's what I think is coming, guys. I think we're going to see Biden ride in on a white horse to try to save the Democrats. Now, will he be able to do it? I don't know. But I do think that Jamel is expressing a legitimate concern. Hillary could go down on this one, or at least it could become too politically hot for her to be the face of the Democratic Party.
So let's go to Scott next about this. Scott, you know, whenever you think about the politics of this, to many people, the legal aspects of whether what she did was actually a violation of law is a much fuzzier question. What's your take on whether what Hillary did was actually illegal as opposed to being exceptionally damaging?
Well, it seems illegal. In every segment you ask me about law that I don't actually practice, I will repeat the same thing. I don't know this area perfectly, but if you look at the laws on the books with respect to the possession and storage of confidential or top secret, in this case, information, it sure looks pretty bad. If you haven't read Gabriel Maller's tweet storm that he then recorded, I highly recommend you do so. He got into a lot of the the law on what he was calling spills, about information leaking out and where it can be stored and what happens to you. And they're very, very strict standards. You know, it seems that the only wiggle room here, and where the Team Clinton is hanging their hats, is the fact that it maybe wasn't classified at the time, and that different departments have different theories of what's confidential and what's not. Now, this all seems to be complete bullshit, but that seems to be where they're going. I would just like to align myself frighteningly with Team Cromwell and Dwayne here and say, first of all, I'll believe that she's in trouble when I see an indictment. Until then, I'm just going to shrug my shoulders and not believe it. However, I do think there is an amazing Machiavellian play here for Team Biden and for Team Obama, and that is to actually have the DOJ file that indictment and have Joe Biden ride in on his white horse to save the day.
Jeff, what's your take on this? You got any different take on what Scott just offered in terms of the legality of Clinton's email scheme?
Well, okay, yeah. First of all, it's transparently illegal. I mean, I know I usually would like to withhold judgment on that, but in classified information handling issues, and I'm fairly familiar with these on a personal level, there's no intent. Okay, there's no I didn't mean to do this. It's a negligence standard, and the stuff is there. The idea that this stuff was retroactively classified is a bunch of bunkum. Anybody who handles talent keyhole information, that's TK, that's satellite data, it comes from the NSA. By definition, all that is top secret classification, and anybody who's read into the subject knows it. It seems like they're trying to throw the trial balloon that's being raised here. They're trying to throw the advisors under the bus. Somebody stripped the classifications from this information before it was put onto Hillary's email server. But first of all, that's preposterous, because Hillary Clinton would know that anything that's talking about satellite information, that's top secret anyways. And it's a crime not only to have that kind of information on a private server or not in a secured location, but also to not self-report, all right? The simple fact, and this is in the statutes, that you do not report what has happened is itself a felony. Scott said that he won't believe it, and I have taken a very cynical view myself. You won't believe that Hillary's really in any kind of legal jeopardy until the charges are filed. But what will actually most likely happen is this. The FBI, James Comey, the director of the FBI, is going to make a recommendation to the Department of Justice. It's the way it works. They're going to recommend you should press charges or you should not press charges. I cannot imagine, given the way that they normally handle classified information spills, that they won't recommend pressing charges. At that point, the DOJ is going to punt on it because, let's be honest, it's the Obama Department of Justice. At which point, and a friend of mine just said this to me, that's when the leaks are going to get really fun, okay? Because if there's one thing the intelligence community knows how to do, it is throw a knife fight within Washington, D.C. media. You already saw some of that today. There is a leak, the leak that you saw on Fox, clearly from unnamed intelligence community sources, that said, oh, well, there's no way that this information could have had its classifications stripped without somebody doing it on purpose. That's the intelligence community fighting back. They are generally lean to the left, as, you know, it doesn't surprise anybody, but overwhelming any political leanings that they have. They absolutely hate people who don't treat classified information the right way, and they hate people who make the intelligence community look bad or compromise it. So if there are no charges pressed, there's going to be some really bad stories that somehow magically find their way into the media.
So, Bill, talk about that. I mean, Jeff has alluded to this kind of this spy satellite data that we're referring to. This is kind of the latest breaking development in this story. Is that there was some information, the satellite imagery that has allegedly the classified tags were stripped by somebody in Hillary's inner circle. Talk a little bit about the factual background for that and why this in particular kind of is the most damaging revelation in this entire scandal so far, in many people's eyes.
Well, this is absolutely the most damaging scandal thus far. If you look at the history of people who have had their servers seized by the FBI, it's either people who are distributing kiddie porn or people who are distributing illegal Metallica downloads. Now, the public cares deeply about one of these things, and until the revelation that Hillary Clinton was actually giving away classified information, I thought the public was going to treat this as a Metallica download. But now that people know that classified information has actually been compromised, it doesn't matter if it's something as benign and esoteric as a satellite design. The fact that it was classified will ring true with the voters. So I think the scandal is about to go from Washington insider baseball to something much bigger. As far as the DOJ is concerned, actually pressing charges against her, I don't think this DOJ would prosecute Hillary Clinton if she shot an unarmed black teenager. So really, we have got to see a less partisan, and I would call for an independent investigator here, because this DOJ just simply cannot be trusted.
So, Rich, let's go back to you. And if you recall when this scandal first broke, essentially Hillary had really 4 main defenses. Number one, she says, look, the reason I did this is that I didn't want to have to carry 2 separate devices. That's essentially been detonated because it's revealed she's been carrying 2 separate devices this entire time. But the 3 substantive defenses that she's raised essentially were number one, it wasn't illegal, which is at least questionable at this point. Number 2, no classified information was sent over this email, and number 3 was oh gosh, what else did she say? Hold on, Rick Perry here. What's the third thing? oh, she says essentially it was secure. She says, look, my connection was secure. I think that we've conclusively shown that the first 2 of those...
No, it wasn't! I can't even believe she sits there and tries to say her connection was secure. Oh my God, it makes me so angry.
So let's assume that probably the first 2 of those 3 pillars have been knocked down. That we know that classified information at this point was transmitted over the servers. I mean, what do you feel like the likelihood is that number 3 is going to be conclusively detonated at some point as well? That we're going to have ironclad information that the Chinese or someone else got a hold of information that passed over her server, and will that be the final nail in her coffin, do you think?
I could see this eliminating her from the primary, but not causing her to face criminal charges. What I suspect is we will find out conclusively that the Chinese hacked her server and found it. But somehow this is going to be pinned on the person who declassified this classified information. She's got this level of plausible deniability. So all these things can be blown up. Oh, I can't carry 2 devices. I can't do that. I can't do that. But someone else declassified this, and when it blows up, when we find out for sure that the server was hacked, that person will go down, and Hillary, as the Clintons always do, will slide out in the slimiest fashion possible, and people won't care.
Thank you for that pessimistic view, Rich. So next we're going to actually have our producer Aaron be on camera here, because Aaron, I think, has a lot of valuable things to say with respect to this subject. And Aaron, you had a post on IJ Review, I guess it was yesterday, and this is actually right in your kind of background wheelhouse. I mean, you're a former government IT professional who was tasked with handling sensitive classified information, and thesis is, based on what we know about Hillary so far, this is pretty close to treason. So talk a little bit about what your view is with respect to how Hillary has handled this sensitive data.
Well, first of all, I'm glad I assumed you were going to have me on camera. I put on something, but I assure you I'm wearing shorts underneath this. But my basic view, you know, I had basically a 12-year career after I left the Army in government IT. And the way we went about things was a lot different than Hillary Clinton and her homebrew server. When I first started doing this, we were doing satellite communications from Germany to the Balkans, and from there we were pushing out data networks, voice networks, secure and non-secure. We were setting up secret cybernet enclaves, and we were using microwave shots. All of this stuff incredibly vulnerable to signal interception. Okay, and to mitigate against signal interception and possible threats, one of the things you do is employ cryptology. Now, the very base level of cryptology that you would put on an email server or any website for that matter is SSL, and that's Secure Socket Layer. Now, this is the very basic thing. This is like buying your computer and setting up your login. It's the very first thing you do. If you don't do this, pretty much everything after that is worthless, because the front door is open. You can have a lot of stuff inside that may trip somebody up, but the front door's open. You've given them access to figure out how to negotiate and get around everything else you've set up. That's the first thing. Now, cryptology is multi-layered in a military network, in a DoD network. I mean, you have cryptology on even the non-classified, non-secure networks. And the reason why is because even the stuff we say to each other that's not classified, it's for official use only. It is it could get somebody hurt if somebody's picking up that, oh, hey, yeah, honey, we're about to leave and go this place, or hey, we have friends who are over at this team house in this town, and they're going to have a party next week. You know, whatever it is, it can lead to horrible things if that information is gathered. And what Hillary Clinton did is she opened up the entire network to this, because if she hasn't mitigated against any threats, and she's connected into the secure and classified networks, which, I mean, she's sending email, and more than likely these emails are on systems that are government systems, secured systems, and there could be a threat within one of these emails planted by a Chinese MSS worker who's in cahoots with ISI in Pakistan, and all of a sudden they're passing information around between themselves that they've gleaned off the Clinton server, and all of a sudden you have an attack in Benghazi and 4 Americans who are dead. That's how this stuff works. I mean, I'm making a long run at this as far as what could happen. But we've already been hit in cyber attacks by the Chinese. We already know that OPM has been exposed. It isn't a far-fetched thing at this point to think that this information possibly came into the hands of the Chinese because of a weak server put up by our Secretary of State, our chief diplomat in the nation, who should know better and understand what TS information is. It's absolutely ridiculous. I once had to carry cryptology back through Germany overnight in a civilian airport with a 9mm and my bag of cryptology. I had to stay there for 24 hours because the flight was full and I was on standby. Everybody knows when you have secure information like that, you have to keep it safe. You cannot let things get exposed. And she overtly went through steps to not have security put in place, to circumvent national security protocols that are known by everybody who works in the government and retains a security clearance. I've kind of gone off, and yeah, you know, some people want me to pull back and say, oh, it's not treason. Well, I didn't say it's treason. I said it's flirting with the lines of treason. Because when you take into consideration that she also has her own private spy network that she's feeding information to and getting information from, and one of the people who's the lead of it is Sidney Blumenthal, of all people, yes, I do question the allegiance to the United States Constitution and our republic. I do.
Thank you very much, Aaron. And also, we want to thank Aaron for he's done a lot of work in improving our production value over the course of the week. And as you guys can see down at the bottom here, if you tweet about the show using the hashtag BATF, your tweet shows up at the bottom. We will hopefully not let all the many liberal trolls that have found me today or the Palin people know about this hashtag. Otherwise, this entire show will be ruined. But thank you very much for all the work that you've done, Aaron, and thank you for your input here. Let's move on. Actually, let me have one other thing to say. I think that what bothers me the most about this particular scandal is that it bothers me that Hillary Clinton did this as an absolute banner, but it more bothers me that she did it for what I can't see any discernible, like, actual substantive reason for doing it other than she just doesn't want people asking her questions. And it's bothersome that the national security information of our country was put at risk for such a trivial concern. I mean, if there really is nothing out there that she did that is so incredibly damaging that she would have known about ahead of time, I don't understand why more care was not taken before the fact instead of setting up a firewall after the fact and trying to protect the dissemination of that information. But in any event, let's move on to our second topic of the day, which is the ongoing fight between Roger Ailes and Fox News Network and the Donald Trump political machine. Rich, we go back to you as our guest first, as always. Let me ask you, yes, and let me ask you, what's your take on what actually was said between Ailes and Trump? And obviously none of us were there at the conversation, but kind of read between the tea leaves and basically, based on what you've seen, at least in terms of the 4 hours that Hannity gave to Trump, what do you think was actually said? Do you think there was an actual quid pro quo between Ailes and Trump in terms of the coverage that Fox News is giving him?
I don't know that it was a quid pro quo as much as Trump gets a lot of press as being this alpha male. He tells it like it is, and he gets his feelings really hurt if Megyn Kelly asks him a question. And at the same time, it seems like in this case he did actually bring the bluster and make Ailes step down and give him favorable coverage, which is ridiculous. Donald Trump needs to become the Westboro Baptist Church of the Republican primary. We need to ignore him and let him crawl back under a rock. Y'all go. I'm about to go on. I cannot stand the fact that we as conservatives are treating this clown as a person. We're supposed to care about ideas, about records, about governance, and we're good. But those people out there using that hashtag I'm not going to mention, are getting all wound up about a guy because he's a showman. Oh, this President Obama, he's terrible. All he did was talk. He talked and he talked, and he had no record. He became president. So what's the answer? We need a dude who can talk. Fucking A, it's just ridiculous. Okay.
I can tell you that as a former member of the Westboro Baptist Church, Scott Lincicome is very insulted by this comparison.
God hates Bill McMorris.
All right, so let's go to Neal. Neal, obviously, I think the key thing that was said during the course of this entire debate is really what Trump said on the day after the debate, which I guess was last Friday. He says, listen, I brought Fox 24 million viewers, and this is how they treat me. And people attribute all of these, altruistic motives to Fox because they're at least nominally on our side. But in reality, they're all about ratings. I mean, they are interested in nothing. That's what they exist for, is to get ratings and sell advertising dollars. On the other hand, I mean, Megyn Kelly is a property that the network has been grooming for years and years and years to essentially be its next star. Mm-hmm. Do you think that Fox News is essentially, cutting off their nose to spite their face here? They're giving in to the ratings of the moment in favor of somebody who could be a long-term bigger draw in the ratings in terms of Megyn Kelly.
Well, the ways of TV network executives are mysterious and strange. to those of us who are uninitiated. And frankly, I'm reluctant to say too much about Fox News because, hell, one day I might like to appear on the station. But all the same, I do think that because this is such a short-term thing, I don't think we should worry too terribly much about Megyn Kelly's career. I think that they're probably going to let this little hubbub die down, and then Megyn Kelly will be back like it never happened, and she'll be doing her usual thing on Fox News. See, I don't even have cable television, so I never watch Fox News, though I respect what they do. Fair and balanced, that's Fox News, folks. Now, let me tell you something else about the quality television that you can have on Fox News. There are some of the highest rated programs on Fox News, highest rated cable television. And you wouldn't have that if it wasn't quality. Quality, that's what Fox News stands for. When I think of Fox News, I think quality, folks.
Classy quality.
That's what I got to say about that. But no, in all seriousness, Fox, give me a call. I'll come on whenever you want. Look. But no, in all seriousness, I don't think this is the end of Megyn Kelly by any stretch. I do think it's one of those temporary things. I think Donald Trump is one of those temporary things. God willing, a stroke will carry him off in the next 3 months, and we won't have to worry about it. So I think we don't have anything to worry about there.
So Scott, what do you think? You agree with Neal doing here that this is a bump in the road for Megyn Kelly? I mean, look, if you're Megyn Kelly, you have to have at least somewhat of an ego. And of course, we have kind of our late breaking news today is that she's on a vacation, which we don't know at this point whether this is a voluntary vacation on her part, whether Fox told her to take some time off, whether she's truly tired of the spotlight. I mean, is there a chance that although Fox is definitely never going to kick Megyn Kelly off, that she just decides that she's going to walk off and see what her fortunes might hold at CNN or somewhere else?
Well, I wouldn't read too much into the vacation thing because it's August in Washington, D.C. And in New York City. That everybody takes off in August. If it were a different time of year, I might be a little more suspicious. That said,
oh, come on. You think this is legit vacation? Is that going to be your position? You think this is legit vacation? She's really just going...
I would not be surprised at all. Right after the debate, August in broadcast news when nothing's going on, it would not surprise me at all. That said, let's not shed too many tears for Megyn Kelly. Whom I think is good. But the reality is that she could land a job pretty much anywhere. There was an article earlier this week about how TV executives from other networks would pay her double what Ailes is paying her. She is a huge star and has nothing to worry about from an ass clown like Donald Trump or have to worry about her job at Fox News. She is going to be just fine. However, more broadly on the whole Fox News versus Donald Trump thing, I think it's a sham, man. I have no doubt in my mind that the network that spent years giving Donald Trump an infinite platform for his idiocy is in cahoots in some way with the Donald when it comes to this feud. This is ratings gold. We are in the absolute depths of the silly season. I have zero doubt that if it wasn't intended, they're all celebrating their luck and how they fell into this hilarious, fantastic money pit. And sadly, it's working. I mean, we're talking about it here. Instead of talking about real issues and serious policy, guys like Rick Perry who are sitting at 1% because they're not being clownish enough for the current environment.
It's infuriating.
It's horrible.
Well, and Jeff, and
Peter Suderman,
I think that
great
this goes
today to support Scott.
Yeah.
He wrote a thing about Trump and Perry and how the whole race, everything has become how other candidates relate to Trump. which is where we are. This is why Fox is airing what it is. It's become, for now, the Trump show.
Well, and let me go to Jeff here, and this is, I definitely understand Scott's point, and it's silly that we're focusing on Trump to this extent, but to me, I think that Fox News is a big enough player in the movement that we have that if you set aside Trump and you set aside Megyn Kelly, and I agree Megyn Kelly's going to be fine, and I'm not asking for anybody to feel sorry for her. I'm not actually a huge fan of hers. I'm talking really more about Fox News and what it means in our movement. I mean, I think, and as I wrote a piece that went live on Hot Air tonight, that we need to have an examination of how powerful they are in our movement and what it means for us that we've essentially allowed them to dictate to us what it is that we're going to care about and talk about, because there's nobody who will speak out about when they go off the rails or when they do things like this. I mean, isn't that an important message in and of itself?
Well, okay, hold on for a second. I have to put something on before I answer this question. Okay, now that I have my disguise on, I don't want Roger Ailes to realize that I'm talking shit about him and his network here. So I would say that maybe I should have my voice equalized. So I would say that Fox News has a problem with the fact that no one will criticize it. Tucker Carlson, when Mickey Callis resigned from the Daily Caller a couple of months ago, and I think you mentioned this, he was actually admirably frank about his logic. He's like, yeah, I don't want criticism of Fox News on the Daily Caller, and I give him credit for that. Actually, he was very straightforward about it. But there is something toxic when we are not willing to call out people that we disagree with on our own side, and let them get away with the kind of ethical lapses or ethical violations that we would scream and caterwaul about if we saw them on, say, MSNBC or on CNN. And this is exactly the point that you made. And there is very little that can explain the absolute silence to talk about these sorts of issues other than a fear of being forbidden from appearing on these sorts of shows or in this network anytime in the future. And I also recognize that whether I'm wearing a disguise here or not, I basically have screwed myself. So I want to thank you very much for that, Liam. Thank you. I appreciate that you ended my punditry career right here tonight.
So, Bill, let me go to you. There's a report that basically, one of the conflicting reports that I guess is intended to make Ailes look good in this entire fracas is that he called Donald Trump and essentially threatened to, quote-unquote, go to war with him if Trump didn't tone down his criticism of Fox News. Of course, I hear that. I think of the great Key and Peele skit with the substitute teacher where the teacher screams and says, "Do you want to go to war, Balaki?" Is that any better than a promise to essentially soften the coverage? I mean, look, should the head of an alleged news network be calling and talking to a candidate about their coverage at all?
Well, I mean, the important thing to consider here, the most important thing to consider here is that I will be on Red Eye at 3 a.m. right after a pocket catheter commercial on Tuesday. So everybody tune in. But going back to your question, I will be on...
It's going to be a Lunesta commercial, all right? For insomnia.
No, Joy, let me... as someone who's never worked for Fox, Joy, let me finish my thought. I will be on Red Eye at 3 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, and everybody should tune in. And I have also just auditioned for the brand new fall season of Fox's new show, Pleasure Island, with Donald Trump and Katie Couric. It's a bunch of people who have had their contracts canceled from other networks, and Roger Ailes is just scooping them up and bringing them up under the umbrella. But the most important takeaway from this is, when you look at the debate and you break down the debate and how Megyn Kelly and Donald Trump handled themselves, I ended up on Fox News at 3 a.m. for Red Eye on Tuesday, and you guys should all tune in.
This is a disastrous segment.
Leon, this is what you get when Leon takes his personal vendetta and brings it up and makes us talk about it.
What I think is funny is
no personal vendetta.
We've all revealed how little integrity we truly have, except for Scott, I guess, and Leon.
Yeah, Scott and Leon, you keep your integrity. I'm going to be famous.
I'm going to get some of that sick Roger Reynolds money, okay?
I want to get on TV, you assholes.
Rent is expensive here, man. I really need the money, so I'm just going to sell the hell out, all right? I don't give a shit.
Scott is literally dressed as a used car salesman right now. Scott is dressed as a used car salesman right now, and you're telling me he has integrity? Good Lord.
Scott lectures at a university, for God's sake. These men don't care about
I don't need to sell cars.
Fox News has done nothing to me personally. I'm bothered by it. I said what I said.
Leon, we all know you're on Team MSNBC, and you have been for a very long time.
That's a great point, Jeff. Leon has appeared on MSNBC many times.
Can we really trust this
man? Can we trust Leon Wolf?
Not only that, but
I don't think we can.
He appeared on MSNBC to denounce the police, our friendly people who bring us law and order and keep us safe.
Exactly. Now, is this at all fair and balanced? Yes, because we are calling into question Leon Wolf's integrity. Now, folks, if you are at home watching, go ahead and tweet on the hashtag BATF. Can I trust Leon Wolf? Yes or no? Let's just take a quick poll.
No, I mean, Leon, it's unfair for you to bring in your own personal life into this show. By the way, the Mets are in first place, leading by 3.5 games, and Matt Harvey and Jacob deGrom and Noah Syndergaard have just dominated in recent weeks. Yoenis Cespedes, all day, all long. I love everybody.
Bill, you know what you can do with that? You can stick it in your anus. All right, so before we move on to the Trump thing, we have Rich Cromwell on the program here today, and Rich has stolen my shtick with the weird Twitter. That's the only reason that he's famous, is that he stole everything that I found and brought to the conservative world. I do want to encourage people who are fans of the Donald Trump phenomenon, even if they're not fans of Donald Trump, follow a guy on Twitter named Bucky Isotope. He has a hilarious series of tweets in which Donald Trump's toupee is put into famous pictures. You guys should check that out. Rich, do you have anything that you want to add in terms of weird Twitter? Huh?
The Drake.
Any wisdom from your 5-year-old?
That did was fantastic. The Drake with the Trump hair. I will add. I don't know if you've Travis LeBlanc has, or was it him? There was someone from Weird Twitter that this whole Megyn Kelly, conservative Donald Trump thing. It has gotten so big that it started showing up on my Weird Twitter list, and that's when it was just too much. Like, Weird Twitter is my happy place, and I know you think I stole this, but I had a previous Twitter account. I've been on the Weird Twitter. I'm like hipster Weird Twitter. I've been on it since like 2010, or at least following it. But anyway, that was really the breaking point for me. Like, Weird Twitter is the one that it's where you go to get away from all this noise. And when Donald Trump started showing up on Weird Twitter and conservatives started showing up on Weird Twitter, that was my breaking point. I almost just turned off the entire internet or muted everything until 2016, but Weird Twitter. But that would have helped.
The best Donald Trump related Weird Twitter thing from last Thursday, 2 Thursdays ago, was somebody when Fox took a question from Facebook and they said, "Hey, YouTube commenter, you have a question." And he goes, "Lick my balls, kiss my ass, I'm 14 years old." And Donald Trump said, "Hey, I'll take this one." And that was the best tweet that was sent the entire night.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on. Let's talk about a little bit more serious of a topic than Donald Trump. Let's talk about the newest Planned Parenthood video. Thank you to the folks at Center for Medical Progress for giving us something to talk about for the next infinity weeks. So Jeff, let's go to you first. You guys had one of the stars of the most recent video on your clearly inferior podcast, Splintered Caucus, last night. And you know, to me, although this one is interesting in the legal sense, the issue of the informed consent, it's not as explosive of a video as have been, I would say, probably videos 4 and 5. What's your sense of how this particular video is landing with the public and what it shows about Planned Parenthood?
Well, I mean, I think that's a compound question. There are two separate issues there that need to be separated out. And how it's landing with the public, I have always taken a somewhat more cynical, perhaps, forlorn view about these things. I think that each of these videos is at this point having somewhat diminishing returns simply because the mainstream media, under the influence of SKDK, which is a pretty big wheel when it comes to suppressing unfortunate media stories for the Democratic Party, has begun to tune them out. Now, in terms of pragmatically, to me at least, what matters, I actually think the consent issue is far more important than a lot of other issues. I think that the kinds of people who are going to be horrified by this, the Planned Parenthood videos, just the idea of dissecting fetal organs and sending them and selling them away, a lot of those people are already on side, all right, and you're not persuading people who are pro-choice by that. They'll make excuses they need to make, but the issue of consent is one that to me is a really serious one. It not only implicates medical ethics, but it also implicates the law, and I do think that they have a real problem in the fact that they not only are very unclear to people who are getting abortions about what it is they're consenting to in the first place in a way that would never be accepted, never be tolerated, in government. If I used to run an IRB at the National Institute of Health as an internal review board, I can tell you the consent forms for people who participated in government-run studies were vastly more thorough and incredibly unforgiving. You made sure that everybody knew everything that could conceivably happen to them. So I think these lax consent laws could absolutely be tightened by legislation. It would be smart legislation. It would be legislation that no one could object to. And I also think it's a shame that that conservatives or the Republicans in Congress aren't taking up that angle. I think I talked about this a couple of times in the past, that by going for the whole we must defund Planned Parenthood, the big win, you're not going to get that big win. And instead of not getting that big win, you're going to also pass up smaller victories that actually could be more lethal in the long term to Planned Parenthood simply by denying them a revenue stream that they clearly seem to depend immensely upon.
So in keeping with the kind of ongoing theme of this program, I'm going to go to Scott for another area of law that he does not practice in. One of the things that the courts have kind of recognized with respect to informed consent for patients is, look, every patient, when they go to every hospital, is handed this kind of pile of forms and asked to initial or sign in a ton of different places. And really, if you look, and state by state this varies, but those are actually not given a tremendous amount of weight in court. I think it's assumed that people come in, they're sick, they're rushed, they're not paying very close attention, and they're not really held to a lot of those things that they sign off on. What, if anything, in your mind is different about essentially what Planned Parenthood is doing with respect to informed consent in these videos?
Well, so I don't know, honestly. There is the issue, it seems, is first of all the profit angle. I think is quite significant. That it's not merely about the betterment of an individual in the case of a standard medical procedure. It's about retrieving what is valuable in the eyes of the retriever and is generating profits. So it's not simply about conducting a medical procedure. It is conducting a medical procedure and then taking the product of that and then gaining remuneration, profit from it. So that does strike me as quite different. I don't know if the law would treat that differently. Again, I only pretend to be a lawyer most of the time.
So yeah, Rich, so let's talk about that. I mean, I've gone in one of the few people on earth who is actually held to all of these ridiculous waivers that they sign without question are lawyers. So every time I get presented with one of these ridiculous forms, I actually take the time to sit there and read them because I know that I'll be held to them later, which causes great annoyance and consternation on behalf of the hospital staff who are just like, oh my God, just sign it. Everybody signs this. And one of the things, I went in for an outpatient surgery a few years ago, and one of the things I realized that I was initialing on as I ran through these documents was they have a paragraph there where you have to consent to them. I was getting a ganglion cyst, which is a harmless thing, but caused me annoyance, removed from my wrist. And I had to consent to them taking that and throwing it away because apparently it's something that belongs to me, and they can't throw it away without my consent, even though it's a harmful thing that they're surgically removing from my body. So, I mean, regardless of what you think about the legal aspects of this, I mean, shouldn't this be something that people are a little more concerned about? It's not just that this is a kind of one of those things that you can check on the consent box, but they're making money from stuff without telling me about it. I mean, is that a greater concern in your mind?
Very much so. This isn't terms and conditions. You know, it's not, okay, I want the newest iTunes. I'm just going to blindly accept the fact that everything I do online is monitored by every company that I use. We're talking about a very serious medical procedure, one that has mental repercussions on the woman, whether or not we want to talk about that. And then they're taking the baby and they're making profit off of the baby. And so this is a different thing. It's even besides the profit. People who agree to have who decide I'm going to have an abortion, maybe I'm not cynical. I don't imagine most of them are that callous that they're just like, oh yeah, let's just throw it in a pile and let people pick through. Oh, here's a leg. But then to take it to the next level where not only are we throwing it in that pile where people can pick around and say, there's the leg, they're making a profit off of it. And this, I don't care about the legality of this. There are a lot of things that are legal that shouldn't be done, but for whatever reason, we don't need the government involved. I happen to think abortion is not such an area. I do think the government should be involved in protecting life. But even if it is kind of legal to shove a stack of paperwork at people and have them sign to give away tissue, then to make a profit, it's just we shouldn't accept this as human beings. And that's what's been most disheartening to me about this whole debate, is that it's partisan, and we're not debating it as human beings, but as legal nonsense. It makes me want to just move to a cabin in the woods.
All right, well, we're going to try something that's a little bit different here tonight. This may be an extraordinarily shortened version of BHTF, given our past experiences with attempting this, but we're going to try for right now to play a short clip from the actual video, and then we're going to get Neal's comment on it. So here we go. We're going to attempt to actually splice in a little bit of the actual video itself. Go, Aaron.
First patient at 8. So then I would wait for certain girls to come in. I would look for an opportunity to consent. So that would mean, like, after they go in, they get registered as a nurse, go sit down. That would be a great opportunity for me to, hey, can I talk to you for a second? Come in, shut the door, Stomach Express. Had a consent form we'd have to initial. You know, I'm certified, I'm donating, I know I'm not going to be reimbursed or compensated. I know this is for disease research. I've already consented that I am going to get an abortion. Yeah, no. That doesn't happen all the time. So first patient at 8.
So Neal, I mean, what's your reaction to that? I mean, as you clearly see here, she says, look, it's a very easy thing. We have a form. It just checks off here. This is what you're doing. This is what you're doing. And a lot of these women, I think, are kind of just wanting to get this process over with and would be anxious to check the form anyway. And yet, even given how easy it would seemingly be, you have here an admission that it just didn't always happen. I mean, what does that indicate to you, I guess, about the manner in which Planned Parenthood conducts its business generally, if anything?
I think one can reasonably assume that we've just scratched the surface of what Planned Parenthood has done to circumvent the law and act indecently in this very sensitive, very fraught situation with a woman coming in to end the life of her child. And I think no honest person can deny that this is ending a human life. This is, however you want to frame it, this is a distinct biological organism. This is, it's wholly dependent on the mother at this stage in its life, but it is not a part of the mother. It is its own being, and opposes it. And what these people at Planned Parenthood are doing, they're using any means possible to procure usable specimens from the products of conception, and these disgusting euphemisms to insulate us from the reality of what is actually occurring here. My response, and I spoke with Holly last night on Splintered Caucus, which is not an inferior podcast, by the way. My response, I feel very strongly about this, and I think a lot of people who actually look at it and actually contemplate what's going on will feel similarly. I told Holly that that the work she's doing and the work that the Center for Medical Progress is doing is of the utmost importance, and it is very meaningful to lots of people, both born and unborn. And I hope, with every fiber of my being, that there is something in their footage, there's some piece of evidence yet remaining that will make it politically and morally just indefensible to continue to fund Planned Parenthood with the $540 million in federal tax money that they currently receive. So that is my response to it. I have a lot of complex and obviously drunk emotions going on right now, but that is powerful stuff.
Well, Neal, we're all just we're very refreshed to hear you not act as the voice of nihilist Arby's for a change. And
no, deep down inside of me, I actually have morals and convictions, and one of them is that every person deserves the basic right to life, and to deny that is a grave evil that will be punished.
Bill, we go to the Irish Catholic last. I know that you have many things to say. Open-ended question. What are your thoughts on the latest revelation in the Planned Parenthood videos?
Well, this video was underwhelming compared to their undercover videos that they've shot previously. And I think that's intentional. If you look at the last time that Holly O'Donnell spoke, she spoke after the first two undercover videos were released and pretty much gave backup, albeit it's a single witness, as any of these lawyers can tell you, a single witness is not the best person to have. But then they backed it up. Holly O'Donnell talked about, in the third video, how they profited from it. And in videos 4 and 5, we saw abortionists line iteming different organ parts and talking about how this was a better way to take an intact fetus and cut it up as if it was a cow so that they could sell the heart as porterhouse, the brain as New York strip, and the liver as filet mignon. So this video was the least overwhelming, at least on a visceral, emotional connection of all of Center for American Progress's releases thus far. But I think you're going to see in the weeks to come that there will be something, a statement from a Planned Parenthood rep or employee that will back up exactly what Holly O'Donnell is saying. Their media strategy thus far has been absolutely brilliant, and I think that this is going to actually carry forth. And I think that they released this particular video not just because the Obama bundler turned federal judge has blocked the release of other undercover videos, but because they, like Megyn Kelly, know that this is the slowest news week and they are on vacation, the same way I am right now. So I think you're going to see something to corroborate exactly what Holly has described. And that this video was, I think, actually inferior to the Splinter Caucus last night. Holly O'Donnell actually told Neal and all his co-hosts all about how she had suffered PTSD and she couldn't find therapists to believe her because they couldn't believe that this type of action was going on. And that is why the Center for Medical Progress's research and work is so important. And it's so important for everyone watching right now. Be that guy on Facebook who's sharing it. Because honestly, you have a voice on Twitter, on Facebook. When we talk about how great social media is, we normally say it's so you can stay abreast of your friends' actions. But this is a way to actually influence people, to take a veil off. And not everyone has the stomach for what is on those videos. It sent me into, gosh, depression for a long time. Everyone share these videos. Be that guy who explains it to people who don't have the stomach to watch.
And in all seriousness, and you know, we have friendly joking here with Jeff and Neal about their podcast. You guys need to go if you don't listen to it and you're not a regular subscriber to it. Go and listen to last night's episode. Kudos to you guys for having Holly O'Donnell on there. I think that it was a very important thing for you guys to do, and congratulations. So everybody,
hey, kudos to her, frankly. All right, I thought she did a fantastic job of making her case and representing herself. I was not only I was glad that we had her on, but I was very impressed with her, and I know Neal was too.
All right, so let's move on a little bit. Let's close off with a little bit of 2016 talk, as we must this time of year, and non-Donald related talk exclusively for the last. Anybody mentions Donald over the last 10 minutes or so of this program, you will be summarily dumped from
Donald
the feed,
Trump
and
is
the
a
rest of
Nats
us will
fan.
continue
Donald
on.
Trump roots for the Nats.
All right, so Aaron, you know what to do.
Aaron, dump him, Aaron.
He's gone. And make the flushing sound that Rush makes whenever he's getting rid of an obnoxious caller. Whoosh! There goes Bill. All right, so so I want to talk a little bit with Rich about Carly. Yes, that's fine. Let's talk a little bit about Carly Fiorina, who's risen, I think deservedly so, to a place in the top 5 in most of the polls, you know, into the kind of 6 or 7% range, where I think next time she'll be invited to the big kids debate, as it were. What is it about Carly Fiorina and the other person who will not be named that makes people who have no career or political experience or no career in elected office so attractive to the voters right now?
Because we're tired of being sold out. We're very focused on the presidential election right now because that's the theater, that's the circus. But when we actually look at Washington, we look at our state reps. I live in Arkansas, which is supposedly a very red state, and you look at what the Republicans here do. It's all very squishy and spend money and taxes. And we're just constantly sold out. Like, I'm not a Republican. I often vote for them, but I'm an independent. And that's where someone like Fiorina can come in and make an argument, because part of it is wishful thinking. She has no record to prove that she's going to go to Washington and make the deals that people normally make when they go to Washington. But that's what's really motivating this movement right now, is no matter what, no matter how much lip service, it's always the next election. I didn't come up with this analogy. I wish I could remember who it was, but for those of us who are actually conservative and don't just care about the team sport aspect of it, who want policy changes, who want government to be smaller. The Republicans in Washington are like Lucy holding the football, and we conservatives are Charlie Brown. And every time we line up to kick the ball, they yank it away. And so with someone like Fiorina, there is the possibility that she's not going to yank the ball away at the crucial moment, and we're actually going to get to kick it and score a victory.
So, Scott, there's kind of a group of guys right now who are super qualified. I think in any other election cycle would be far away front runners, but right now are kind of stuck in the 1 to 3% range. And I'm talking specifically here about Bobby Jindal, Rick Perry, and Chris Christie, the three kind of two-term governors who are involved in the fight. I'm going to ask you a two-part question. Who do you think stands the best chance of getting up off the mat and getting in the fight, and who deserves to stand the best chance of getting off the mat and getting into the fight, if that's a different person?
Gosh, I'm really tempted to say Perry and Perry on both. But that's not an easy answer. I mean, I think honestly, Christie probably has a little more of an inside track in terms of a cleaner slate, more access to kind of the New York, New Jersey funding and the kind of the squish funding scene. So I'd say probably I'll give it to Christie on the more likely to emerge. In terms of who's most deserving, certainly not Chris Christie. I think it'd be a tight race between Perry and Jindal. I think Jindal has done fantastic stuff on policy. He's really laid out some great plans. At the same time, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think the things that Rick Perry is actually saying on policy right now, I mean, actually saying in speeches, whether it be on financial services issues or on cost of living and, come to the black community, I mean, Rick Perry's saying great, interesting, innovative, good policy, things that conservatives, free market types should really like. And again, just to reiterate, Peter Suderman's piece today in Reason Magazine, you should read it. It is excellent because it's depressing in the fact that Perry's running this smart, serious, innovative campaign and getting absolutely nowhere because of the clown whom we shall not name. So I guess I would go with Christie and Perry, but it's a pretty tough call. They're all pretty deserving.
So Neal, let's go back to you. Really, more or less everyone in the race, with the exception of Perry and Rubio, is making a play for the angry Republican voter. Perry and Rubio, to my mind, are the two guys in the field who are making active, optimistic pitches. I mean, they really are trying to say they're trying to recapture the city on the hill mantra from Reagan. Do you think that Rubio in particular has a chance to get his campaign off the mat from where it's been flagging? Or, I mean, are we just at a moment where the Republican Party voters are not interested in hearing that kind of message?
I do think Rubio has a chance. I think Rick Perry still has a chance. Rubio's numbers went up after the first debate, whereas Donald Trump's numbers, I believe, went down. Of course, that's all depending on which pollster you decide to pay attention to. But I really, it's one of the strangest things that a guy like Rick Perry is trying to run this serious campaign, touching on the issues, even challenging conservatives a little bit, and he gets absolutely no traction because Donald Trump is sucking up all the oxygen in the room. It's a travesty. The people who are giving Donald Trump this oxygen should be disenfranchised. If you really want my opinion, they shouldn't be allowed to vote. They should be felons under the law, and they should be prosecuted. They should be put into prisons. They should just be excommunicated from society. But,
Tell us what you really think about them, Neal.
No, honestly, I really think they're dupes. I think that they lack the intellectual capacity to vote, appropriately, and I don't think that they should be trusted with the right to vote. I think that they should go away, leave the Republican Party to its own devices. It'll be stronger without them, because here's the thing about those folks. They're not as powerful as they think they are. They're not as numerous as they think they are. The Republicans could easily find more votes if they were to jettison the Trump supporters than to cater to their every little whim, like surly adolescents that they are. So that's my frustration with the Trump voters. Do I think Rubio and Perry can gain some more traction? I don't know. That's the short answer.
So let me, and Aaron's going to have something to say here, but before he does, I want to say something else about Perry, who was another guy that I got to meet and talk to over last week at the Red State Gathering. And Perry is running a serious campaign that's focused on the issues, and I admire him for that. But more, I think what Perry's problem is, and I don't think that he should change this necessarily, but I mean, he still is running a super upbeat, super optimistic, America can be great again type campaign, and I think the problem is that a lot of Republican primary voters, frankly, don't feel that way about America right now. I mean, is there something to that, Aaron, or is this a message that Rick Perry should keep pushing?
Well, I'm gonna kind of say both. I'm gonna split the baby a little bit here. If you go back and okay, so first of all, let me start off with a full disclosure moment. I've been working for the Rick Perry campaign. My role has been in the background. It's not something that's a public role. That's why I haven't been writing on Red State about Rick Perry and the race and everything like that. And let me just state right here now, paycheck or no paycheck, I still support Rick Perry. I'm hoping tomorrow we'll be able to raise some funds for him, and all this scuttlebutt about him having to leave the race will stop, because frankly I think it's ridiculous this early, especially when we're basing these things off of polls that clearly showed that Trump has no possible way of winning the nomination when he, you know, what is it, over 50% of the Republican Party says they'll never vote for him. But as far as Rick Perry goes, and as far as Trump goes for that matter, I think Trump has become an avatar for anger within our party, and that anger over the course of the last 5 years has went from being directed at the DC establishment to anybody who has ever held elective office ever. I mean, when you look at the polls right now, our top tier is people who have never been elected to anything. And the next tier down is the people who have actually been elected to stuff. But on Rick Perry specifically, I got to say, Mark Levin was talking about Ronald Reagan's 1977 speech earlier this evening, and he was actually talking about it to fillet Donald Trump. But I want to change it around a little bit. You go back and you listen to Reagan's 1977 speech, a lot of the stuff that he was talking about, you can actually see it reflected in the speeches that Rick Perry has given so far, whether it was the race economics speech or the Trump is a cancer on conservatives speech. There's moments where he talks about reaching out to the African American community and how it's not just about busing, it's not just about education, it's about more than that. There's points where he talks about what a conservative is and what a conservative isn't. And he specifically mentioned that these people who will come around and they'll flout a bunch of rhetoric and tell us a bunch of things, but they're motivated by anger and hate, and they aren't true conservatives. That's not what conservatism is. And I think right now, all this anger that we see that is basically the fuel behind this Trump movement is anger that only leads to apathy, and that ultimately leads to defeat, because it's a fatalistic anger. It's not a righteous anger, an indignant anger that makes you want to fight and come back and take your republic back. It's an anger that makes you into the Joker in the Dark Knight Rises, and you just want to watch the whole damn world burn down. Rick Perry's not quitting. He's going to take on the establishment. Best way to get them out of your way is to make sure you vote for somebody who believes in the 10th Amendment and wants to make DC as inconsequential in your life, in your everyday life, as possible. So there's my disclosure. There's my endorsement. That's all I got to say.
All right, guys. Thank you very much, Aaron. We are about 10 minutes over time, so we're going to go ahead and close out the show. Sorry.
I'm talking. The most important thing to realize. Wait,
I didn't get a chance to say anything either, and I wasn't going to talk about the Mets, I might point out.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about the Mets, but I steeply disagree with the casting Trump supporters out of the tent, even though we may not think that they embody everyone. When Reagan tossed the Birch Society out of the tent, he wasn't saying, hey, you guys shouldn't vote for us anymore. He was saying, you guys are not our intellectual standard. I am your intellectual standard. And I think that's very important to note. People who support Trump, I mean, this isn't a cardinal sin. It's not Arianism. They don't deserve excommunication. They deserve our sympathy, our pity, our prayers, and they'll come back. But
Bill, I agree with you 100%.
Reflexively call them racist. If you think that 30% of the Republican primary voter is, if you think 30% of the Republican primary voter is tweeting right now, is a tweeting Trump supporter rather than just a guy who answered a telephone call, you are sadly mistaken, and we should not brand every Trump supporter based on what Trump says and what Trump supporters tweet and email to Eric Erickson. I think that's foolhardy. I think it's foolhardy to cast somebody out of the tent.
Perhaps we can explore this on a future episode, but I do think that the Trump supporter, your average Trump supporter, I'm sorry, Leon, we'll get through this, but the average Trump supporter is akin more to a surly adolescent than an actual real political figure. And so once he's done stomping around his room and yelling, "You're not even my real dad," then we can welcome them back. We can say, "Come down, get some dinner, son, and it'll be all right."
Hold on, can I just for a second actually point out that
all right, so hold on.
No, one thing quickly. You're both wrong. The people who support Trump, and I know a lot of them who are smart and educated, do it because it's fun. It's entertainment. They're as serious about it as they are about most other things in politics, which is not at all. When it comes time to vote, their loyalties will shift. He will not pull the kinds of numbers he's pulling right now. I think everybody is overreacting like a fucking moron to his predominance. I think it's all an illusion, and I would stake money on it.
All right, guys, we are way over time. We're going to close off. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Want to say thanks to my regular panel of guests: Scott Lincicome of the Cato Institute, Neal Doing of the Federalist, Jeff Blehar of the Ace of Spades Decision Desk, F. Bill McMorris of the Washington Free Beacon, and thanks very much to Rich Cromwell of the Federalist, who was our guest tonight. Appreciate having you with us. Thanks, everybody, for taking time out of your night. And thank you, most of all, for watching. We'll see you next week on the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends.
Last word. AKA Donald Trump.
Let's go Mets!
Ugh, this Jim beat.
Put your drink straight from the one.